I'm going to go ahead and get started. I've got 6:30. Thank you everyone for coming this evening. My name is Vicki Rios. I'm one of the assistant city managers here for the city. I have a brief presentation I'm going to do for you here in a moment, but before I do that, I would like to invite our council member Aldama to come up. He has a few words he'd like to say to all of you.
Good evening and welcome to the main library. Thank you so much for being here. Your engagement is valued and we appreciate you being here. The bond 2023 is and will be in your hands, and that's why it's important that you're here today to listen to our staff. And please, I encourage you to bring all the questions that you can muster. And if you don't remember some of the questions or you just are not thinking about that right now, there are some information they'll leave you, emails and phone numbers, that please reach out and say, I forgot this question. Can you answer this for me? The bonds are intended for long-lasting projects to transportation. When we talk about the transportation piece in the bond, they're not for insignificant projects. So there's a lot of projects. What I just learned today, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that the ballot measure has a lot of projects. There are a lot of sample projects. That does not mean that other projects can't be added to that. So if someone said, for example, roadway X is falling apart, staff went and analyzed it, looked at it, that could be part of the bond if the bond and when the bond passes. Mostly tonight, I just want you to know that we value you, we appreciate you. I can't stand up here and advocate for or against the bond. I can just advocate for you to stay engaged. And please do, and please ask all the questions you can. And then the other part of the bond is for public safety, for apparatuses and equipment that firefighters and police officers use, and for some of their facilities as well. Really, really important stuff. Really happy that you're here. If you need to get a hold of me, you can reach me at jaldama@glendaleaz.com. But you also have the representatives, the other council members that can be contacted as well, and you can reach them through City Hall. But thank you for being here. Ask all the questions you can, and I hope to hear back from staff in a few days, a couple weeks, on the outcome of our meetings. I believe this is the last meeting. So this is the last meeting, folks. I hope you can ask a lot of questions. Vicki, thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We are recording the meeting, or it's streaming on Facebook Live, and so one other thing you could do is go back and re-watch it, if that was something that you were interested in doing. So I just wanted to mention that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the bond questions, the bond projects. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about general obligation bonds in general. That's a pun, get it? General obligation in general. It's accountant humor. The property tax impacts of these bonds, and then give you some voter information. So the issue before us is a bond election about streets and safety. And so to improve streets and safety within the city of Glendale, the council has put 2 bond questions on the ballot for November. The first bond question invests $82 million in street and intersection improvements. And as you can see here on the slide, it's for constructing and reconstructing streets and intersection safety improvements, major and local streets, highways, bridges within the city, and congestion reduction, street widening, signage, landscaping, lighting, and all of the accoutrements that sort of come along with rebuilding a street. Question 2 invests $78 million in public safety projects. The language here, and I'm going to go back to this one too. This is kind of what they call like I'd call it like an abstract of the ballot. When you get the ballot or when you see the voter information pamphlet, and I saw at least one person here who had it, the ballot language is much longer than this. This is just the front part of it that's kind of a summary, and I'm referring to it as kind of an abstract. So as Councilmember Aldama mentioned, the second question is about public safety projects, and it's about investing in acquiring and constructing and in modernizing and improving things like fire stations, police and fire training academies, the police department forensics laboratory, and other public safety facilities, of which one would also be the court, because the court is another one that's not specifically listed but is considered a public safety facility. And then we have language in here about acquiring additional equipment, mostly to equip those projects and those buildings. We don't use bond funding often for things like fire trucks and that. We pay cash for those. But in the event that the equipment is part of, say, the forensics lab and that, to buy it, we would use bond funds. General obligation bonds are unique in that they must be authorized by you, the voters, and they're paid for using your secondary property taxes. That property tax is assessed on all of the residential, commercial, industrial, and even agricultural properties within the city. The tax is based on what we call the limited assessed valuation of your property. That comes from the county assessor's office. And there are some constitutional limits set by Arizona state law about the amount of general obligation debt that a city can issue. It's 20% for the items listed there, which include water, sewer, public safety, parks, streets, and transportation projects. And then 6% of that limited assessed valuation for general municipal purposes, which would include things like a library is considered general municipal purpose. General obligation bonds are considered to be a fiscally responsible way to fund these large projects because everyone gets the benefit of the project now and pays for it a little bit over time, as opposed to if we use the tax money or use some mechanism to save money. By the time we're able to build the police station or whatever amenity, repair or reconstruct the roads and those type of things, the people that have paid for it may have moved on, gone to another city and such. So it's just a way to pay for it so that we can enjoy the benefit now without waiting. A question we get asked a lot is, well, isn't this going to then result in a tax increase? And the reality of that is that the city has old bonds that we're paying off, and so we can do these projects and pass these bonds without a property tax rate increase. I'm going to show you a graphical of that in a moment. It does depend a bit on property values staying stable, and we do grow a little bit every year. We've grown actually a lot in the last year because of construction out near the Loop 303. But that has allowed Glendale to actually lower the tax rate over the past, I think it's now possibly 8 years. This is the graph that I'm talking about that kind of shows you that we are paying off old bonds. So you can see this is our debt service along the along the left, and then along the long edge is the years. And so here we are in 2022, 2023, and you can see the debt service dropping off. That's because we've paid off the bonds that we issued 30 years ago for similar types of projects. And so we can issue new bonds and keep the same property tax rates. This is a property tax bill for a property located here in Glendale. And I just wanted to kind of walk you through some of the information on it. I don't know how many people are really familiar with their property tax bill. They were mailed, I want to say about 2 or 3 weeks ago, so you probably received yours, and so you can go back and look at it, maybe based on this information, and look at your own bill. But this property, its assessed value in 2021 was $341,000, and it increased in 22 to $358,000. And then below that is something they call the full cash value, and that went from $353,000 to $377,000 in this particular case. That has nothing to do with the actual market value of your property, because these are limited in ways by state statute as to how much they can grow and things like that. So it's not really a reflection of the true value of your property, but it is the assessor's assessment of the value. So the property tax that I'm talking about and that we're talking about tonight, I've highlighted there in red, is the one that says Glendale Secondary. Out of the entire bill, it's about 14% of the bill. But you can see what I was mentioning earlier, from 2021 to 2022, the rate actually going down. So it was $1.34 and almost 10 cents per $100 of limited assessed value, and it went down to $1.29 and 1.2977. Now, in this particular case, you can see the tax went up a little bit. That just has to do with the relative increase in the assessed value of this property compared to other properties within the city. Some will go up, some will go down, but it's minor. It's a small amount, and overall the city collects the same amount of money. This particular ballot is an all-mail ballot. You don't have to request a mail-in ballot or anything like that. All of the registered voters within the city of Glendale will receive a ballot. Ballots are scheduled to be, well, the last day to register to vote is October 10th. So if you're not registered to vote and you would like to vote, you have until October 10th to register. And I'll give you some more information about that in a moment. The ballots are going to be mailed on October the 11th. If you don't receive a ballot, or you need a replacement ballot, or your ballot is damaged or something like that, you have until October 27th to request a replacement ballot. The recommended day to mail your ballot is November 1st, and that is because all ballots must be received by the county before 7 p.m. on November 7th, which is Election Day. The city will have at least one place for you to drop off your ballot if that's your preference, or if you're late and past the deadline. At this point, the only one that I'm aware of is at the Foothills Recreation and Aquatic Center. And so that was the one the county was able to get set up. If you want more information about the election itself, your ballot and that type of thing, this is the contact information. You can contact our city clerk. The city clerk also has a website about this election and some information there. We have a website, the city does, that answers a lot of questions about the bonds and gives more information than this very brief presentation that I'm giving you. Its website is there, it's Glendale Bond 2023. And then finally, the voter information, if you need that, is at beballotready.vote. And so that's the place where you can see if you're registered. You can actually, after you vote, track your ballot there, or sign up to have your ballot tracked and things like that. So that's where you would go for more of the county information about the election. That is the end of my presentation. I'm going to tell you a little bit of logistics now and what we're kind of going to do. So as I mentioned, the meeting is being streamed live on Facebook. So the staff here is going to record some individuals that are going to go through these posters on the back wall here. And so that's going to take roughly around 5 minutes. It actually may take even less than that. So I'm going to ask you to just kind of hang tight while they do that. You can hear what they're saying, though, which is really good because it will give you some information about what they're talking about and what they're presenting. And then once they're kind of clear of there, our staff will be there. You have the fire chief, the police chief. We have people from streets and transportation here to answer any questions you may have about their projects. And then we also have our budget and finance team here. They'll be in the back of the room, and I'll be with them. So if you have any questions for me, or you have a financial question, you can give those, bring those to me in budget and finance. and then you'll have access to ask all your questions of our public safety and our transportation experts that are here. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to my team, who's going to be doing the recording, and it just ask you to hang in there for a couple of minutes. Thank you again for coming, and I appreciate your time.
Hi, I'm Mike Harris. I'm with the communications team for the City of Glendale, and we have several leaders here, as Vicki just mentioned, that want to talk about some of the projects that they are wanting to show. So I'm going to start with Glendale Police Chief Chris Briggs.
Thanks, Mike. What you see here on the first easel is a current project. This is our new property evidence building. It's just coming out of design, going into construction next year. And we found that it was really going to be necessary that when we moved all of our property and evidence over here, that we identify a place for our new forensics lab. So on this easel, you can see this open area, and this is a depiction of where the building would go for our forensics lab. And the purpose of this is, one, to make sure that our evidence isn't moving unnecessarily far, but also to increase our capabilities and to better serve our victims and our community with more timely analysis of evidence and make sure that it gets into the criminal court system in a much faster pace. I do have Ann Steinmetz with me. She's our forensic scientist supervisor, and I'm going to let her talk about what the capabilities are going to be if we do get this lab.
Thank you, Chief. Currently, the capabilities of the Glendale Police Department are crime scene, fingerprints, and footwear with very preliminary DNA results. However, with a full-service crime lab, we would be able to add to that toxicology, which is the analysis of blood to determine if there are foreign substances, such as alcohol or drugs of impairment. We can also do controlled substance analysis to determine if somebody is arrested for drugs, what weight and what the type of drug that is, as well as full DNA analysis. In addition, we would be able to expand our current computer forensics capabilities to include the analysis of iPhones and computers, and all of that would be done much more expedient than it is currently.
Thank you, Ann. Thank you, Chief. And moving on, now we have Glendale Fire Chief Ryan Freeberg, who's going to describe some of his projects.
Thanks. How you doing? Good to see you again. So when we're talking about the infrastructure inside the fire department where we're going to locate our fire stations, we're a data-driven organization. So what you see here in this map is the opportunity for us to partner with our global information systems, GIS partners here in the city. And what they do for us is they plot all of the incidents that's happened inside the city of Glendale. This map dictates 2022. And then on top of that, the multicolored, multi-sided geometric shapes you see are called polygons. And we overlay those on every one of our fire stations to show how far you can get in 4 minutes, which is the time tissue dies and when flame impingement against the structure creates an ignition of the structure. So what we look at is these clusters of calls that happen outside a polygon, and when we start to see these triggers, this is what generates the recommendation, conversation, and prioritization of, well, maybe we need a fire station in this area where we see a cluster. Maybe we need additional resources, or maybe we need to build something out in the new frontier. But how we do that is data-driven and partnerships with our GIS folks and our great partners in our data and our IT group. Next, as we move down here, this is currently the elevation for Fire Station 153, which is a project that's in works right now. We're at about 90% schematic design, trying to get to a contract in the fall and hopefully start construction January of 2024. But what I want the citizens to know is this is the type of architecture and structure you're going to get in the city of Glendale. Again, great relationships with our planning division. But what I want our citizens to see is this is a building that should stand out, not stick out in the community, blend into the neighborhood, really be seen as a beacon of public safety, and really welcome you into where our firefighters are at, because it is their building, it's a public building. But this is 153, it's just north of Thunderbird on 59th Avenue, and this is the future of the fire stations in the city of Glendale. So it really kind of brings it to life and what you could expect of the architecture here in the city of Glendale. And finally, this is the floor plan. And for our citizens, this is what you get when you have great relationships with your firefighters and our city partners. Because what we've done is a very modernized and contemporary design that really looks, if you will, at kind of a hot zone, a warm zone, and a cold zone to really combat the realities of occupational cancer and the realities of cardiac disease in our industry. So when you look at our floor plan and you look over here where our apparatus bay is, this is where our fire engines and ladder trucks park, and where our personal protective equipment can off-gas, if you will, from the contaminants of fire. This is what would be that workspace in red zone. And when our members come into the fire station, they can decontaminate. That's kind of that yellow zone. Because when they come into what would be the green zone, this is their personal space. This is where they train, they work out, they eat, and then they sleep. So really what we're trying to get is our citizens to know we have a workspace, a communal space, and kind of personal space. But again, what's great about this design and this modernization and contemporary factor is that we can expand this and contract this based on the needs of the fire department. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chief. And of course, one of the questions deals with public safety, police and fire, and the other one deals with transportation. And I have Parab Adabala with me. He's the Deputy Director of Transportation. Parab, what would you like to show the people?
Thank you. What you see on this board is transportation or the city's funding need for achieving our goal of 72 PCI in 10 years. PCI stands for Pavement Condition Index. It's basically a grade from 0 to 100, 0 being almost non-existent pavement to 100 being brand new pavement. So our goal in 10 years is to achieve 72 PCI. Currently, the average of Glendale streets has a PCI of 58. So we want to improve that. And to do that, over the 10 years, we would need approximately $300 million. We have about $215 million identified in the 10-year capital improvement plan. So an additional $82 million approximately would help us achieve the 72 PCI at the end of 10 years. Now, in the board 2, what you see is an illustration of potential bond street projects. The green lines are basically what you would be street segments that would receive pavement improvement. This would add decades of life into the street pavement. And the blue dots are basically intersection improvements, intersections where we can do safety improvements. And further down, I'll walk you through some of the examples of what those could be. On this board, what you see is the current condition of a sample street. This is Bethany Home Road between 43rd Avenue and 51st Avenue. And you can see the street could use an investment to bring the street pavement up and add decades of life to it. In the next slide, what you see is a sample street where we actually have done reconstruction of the pavement. So this is Cactus Road between 59th Avenue and 67th Avenue. And you see the before and after pictures. Up here, you see the street pavement before reconstruction, and down here, you see the after, and you see the intersection before and the intersection after. This is what we're talking about when we say adding decades of life to the street pavement. And the last board here shows what some of the typical safety items could be that intersections would receive. Not all of the locations would receive all of them, but these are generally the toolbox that we go to. And I'll read all of them, and then I'll give a couple samples and I explain them. Raised medians, striping, signage, access control, consolidate access points, streetlights, bike lanes, sidewalks, high visibility crosswalks, pedestrian ramps that are ADA compliant, turn lanes, bus pullouts, traffic signal timing, traffic signal coordination, which we also call adaptive traffic signals, vehicle detection, pedestrian detection, flashing yellow arrows, emergency vehicle preemption. The couple examples I'm going to use here is streetlights. So adding streetlights at intersections would light up the crosswalk, and pedestrians that are using the crosswalk are visible to motorists. That way, they can see the pedestrians, and you reduce the potential for any crashes, which improves safety for everyone. The other one is bike lanes. when you add bike lanes to an existing roadway, what you do is you create a psychological effect that the roadway is narrower. Not that it is, but that effect makes everyone slow down, which improves the safety for everyone using the roadway.
Great, thank you very much, Parab. So what we're going to do now is, if you're in the room, we're going to invite you to come up if you'd like to ask any questions of the people you just heard from. You're welcome to come up and look at the boards and ask questions. And at home, thank you for tuning in. We're going to end the broadcast now, but if you have further questions, you can look at glendaleaz.com.